Good movie.
John and John segment here, Mr. Gilstrap. Do you want Mr. Doyle to go first this week?
Please.
Yeah, all right, Mr. Doyle.
I have no idea why he wanted me to go first, and I don't ever care who goes first, so I will go first. This past week, the Federal Justice Department withdrew its subpoenas for some New York Times reporters. It's sort of like a Groundhog Day. They had subpoenaed the reporters because they thought somebody had leaked information about the new Air Force One to these reporters. And so they immediately subpoenaed the reporters. The reporters, backed up by their employer, the New York Times, showed up in court and said, "We want to know why we're being subpoenaed." And the judge said, in effect, "That's a really good question," and asked the prosecutor there on behalf of the Justice Department why they wanted to know. And the Justice Department gave an answer that the judge really didn't like very much. And the judge said, in effect, "That's not a very good answer. How about this? How about you show up in court and you show me all of your information so I can decide whether or not these are valid reasons." And the Justice Department withdrew the subpoenas. Clearly, the Justice Department did not want the judge to know, or I say clearly, I am deducing, let me phrase that correctly, I am deducing that the Justice Department did not want the judge to know how flimsy their case was. So anyway, this is not the first time. A little bit early, a few months earlier, a reporter for the Washington Post, Hannah Nathanson, this is on an entirely different matter, the Justice Department showed up and grabbed her computers and began going through them. The Post defended Nathanson. And this sort of thing really, it's the one judge in this most recent one, and this is, I think, the key phrase. The judge said to the Justice Department, "Wait a minute. We have a whole history of litigation and decisions in terms of reporters' rights, freedom of the press. And it is the norm that subpoenaing the reporter should be the last resort, not the first resort. But the current Justice Department seems to want to, shoot first and ask questions later, and they will simply, almost instinctively, go to the subpoena route. And the judge is basically saying to them, you can't do that. If you really think you got the goods, the norms, the decisions are, you got to find every other way possible first to get the information. And only if you can't do that can you come into court and say, okay, now we want to subpoena the reporter's notes. And secondly, it has to be the last resort. So I don't know if the Justice Department is going to change its tune. I suspect it won't. I suspect we will have future incidents of this, and I just think it is an abomination that the Justice Department is trying to change the norms from well over 100 years of court precedent.
Mr. Gilstrap.
Okay. By way of full disclosure, we all know what I do for a living, right? I have nothing but respect for the First Amendment. I have nothing but respect for writers. However, journalists are a class of mammal that is right around jackals or hyenas, because hyenas eat their own. I mean, there is no leak that comes to a reporter without some reason of personal gain for the leaker. Let me share a really personal story.
I strongly disagree with
that.
Well,
you'll get your shot.
Yeah.
In 2007, a good friend of ours, Chuck Riekers, was retired from the Air Force and got a job as a deputy undersecretary, whatever it was. It was a level in the Department of Defense that required Senate approval. And while he was waiting for the Senate approval, which was being delayed because the Senate does what the Senate does, He was hired by a contractor to essentially pay his salary to continue to do his work for the government. And it's kind of complicated, but the Washington Post, Robert O'Hara, published a front page report that says that Chuck Riekers, Charles Riekers by name. Now you have to understand, this is a guy that I didn't know really well. He was a very dear friend of my brother's. He was always at the family Christmas parties. He and his kids, all this. So he was a really nice guy. And the Washington Post came out with front page report that essentially accused him of corruption for having a no work contract. And Chuck was a really nice guy and didn't know how to handle the press. They never said he was corrupt. They never said that he was accepting bribes, but that was the undercurrent. That was the unstated part, because writers are very good about getting their point across. There were 4 front page articles over the course of 2 weeks of this, and it became quite the hullabaloo, and he became the star at the time, 2007, coming up on an election year, where the government pays people not to work. It's a no work contract. To the tune of $250,000, what they accused. It actually turned out to be $13,800. So on October 14th that year, Chuck killed himself. And now you can't have the direct nexus that suicide is tied to a particular event, but he was in such crisis over all of this, and he committed suicide. On November 7th, the Post-Ombudsman came out with, oops, we had this wrong. We didn't have it wrong. Everything that in the article was true, but none of the context was wrong, because this is something that is done all the time. There is a name for it. This is a way, it's not a bridge loan, but you've got somebody that's working on a government contract and he's transitioning from the government world to the civilian world and into to become part of the Department of Defense. It's done all the time. This is not a unique thing, but that's how the article was presented. Now, Chuck committed suicide. The Post promoted O'Hara, and he became one of their lead investigative reporters. They never rock anything back. They say that, oops, yes, we missed the context. And then in the Ombudsman piece, they go into great detail about the people the reporter could have talked to but didn't. And they come up with all the experts that say this makes no sense. It promotes the agenda of the reporter. It makes the story good. And that's really what it's about at the end of the day, is a story. And this is 2007, before we had internet news, right? I mean, everybody was reading the Washington Post. Everybody was reading the Washington Post. And then the Ombudsman had all of these folks that they found that said, no, experts, real experts in the field, saying, no, this is done all the time. There's no fire, no smoke, nothing to pay attention to. That's what journalists do. They don't make stuff up. They find an agenda, and then they create a story around their agenda. So let's go to what the Department of Defense leaks are. Department of Defense leaks, or any whether state, any federal leaks, they come out leaked by somebody. We don't know who they are. The actual leak is often considered to be traitorous, right? But reporting on the leak is not, because journalists are special. And the fact is, they're indefensible. You cannot, if I'm the keeper of classified information, and reporter Bob says something that's completely wrong, I can't prove my case, because I've got to protect the classified information. So when we have people who are essentially spying, and they do damage to the defense of this nation, when anything from DOD leaks, if it's classified, somebody says it shouldn't be leaked. It's not up to a reporter to decide otherwise. So I think we make a huge mistake giving journalists this free rein to write whatever they want about whomever they want, and as long as they can shape the story to be something it's not, but as long as the words, individual words, line up, then they're not accused, they're not guilty of libel. I think this is wrong. We've allowed this system to spin out of control. And what I think we're seeing the Trump Justice Department doing is they're testing the system. Let's put these stories out there, and let's put the subpoenas out there. Let's make the reporters think about what they're doing. Let's make them have an escort as they go through the halls of the Pentagon, because they're not special. They're actually American citizens who have a job to do. make them nervous, make them spend. It's so damned important to them that they've got to get this done. Let them spend the money on the attorneys to defend what they're doing. Now we have the case law. And as we have case law, we can advance. And at least the system has been tested. Right now, for 100 years, John, these folks have gotten away with everything. You know, William Randolph Hearst caused the Mexican War, for God's sake.
Spanish-American War.
Spanish-American War. Thank you. We have to bring it under control, and it's spinning more and more out of control because newspapers don't count anymore, right? We don't have editors anymore. Anybody in his basement with a computer can write, and AI, God help us, can write the most salacious thing they want and say, well, that's what I heard. I'm reporting on the story I heard. Well, let me see the source. No, I can't show you the source because I'm a journalist and I'm special. I'm tired of it.
Mr. Doyle, your comeback.
Well, I personally, during the time that I was in office, had been victims of journalists who made mistakes and reported incorrectly about me. And I categorically reject that every journalist is this way. There are some. And
there are some good hyenas.
The ones who break the rules should, in fact, be disciplined. But I categorically reject your idea that the system needs to be tested because it's been regularly tested over the last 100 years. And through the courts, we have a set of rules that work. And my contention is that the reason that the Trump administration is testing the system is simply to intimidate journalists from getting the facts. And
do you have evidence of that?
I said I contend that.
Okay.
I didn't say that I had facts. I said it appears to me that is what they are doing. I think it is just, I think they're doing the country a disservice by doing that. If you're in office and you can't take criticism, you shouldn't be in office.
The Fourth Estate is what's doing the damage. If the Fourth Estate, if journalists would actually report facts and have, at least in the Washington Post, back in the days of Watergate, they had a lot of anonymous sources, right? But every single one of those anonymous sources had to be verified. There had to be a second source that would say the same thing. Done. No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Well, we can go back and forth, but I know for a fact, John, this is my world, not yours.
No.
It's not done, and you know why it's not
John,
done?
John, you're wrong.
The reason it's not done, John, is because you got to get the clicks. You got to get the story out first.
You're flat out wrong.
Well, that's fine. Let me talk.
No, this is my topic. I get to close. You're always wanting to close on my topic, and I never try that with yours.
The clickbait is the issue now. And there's always time. We'll correct it later. Go to any major news website, and you will find down at the very bottom that this has changed from a previous. In the past, that would have been caught before it went to press. We don't have that time now, so we have to have some controls on it.
You're picking individual cases and say this means everybody's doing it, and that is simply bad logic and factually incorrect.
We got 6 minutes left. So
So I'll chime in here as well. Just a couple of notes. There is a reason why this program is long form and not short form interviews, and that's by choice, and that's by my choice. And I'll tell you some background and why. Right. So when I was in college, the organization I was with was involved in an incident that made it on the Sports Center and had to do with the St. Joe's Hawk, which the group I was with got into let's call it a fracas with the St. Joe's Hawk. That's the mascot for the St. Joe's sports program. And this was
St. Joseph's University?
In Philadelphia.
Okay,
the basketball program.
The Big Five.
Yes, correct. So anyway, local TV news showed up to do interviews. A select group of us were selected to speak to them by the university. They did an interview, and the question was, do you regret what happened? And the answer started with the word no by whoever was voicing the answer. And then they went on to further elaborate, which explained first and foremost, why the word regret wasn't strong enough. It was more than that. But when they ran the piece on television, they edited right after the word no. So we were set up by the reporters, but too stupid to know that that was going to happen. Now, I knew better because this was what I was studying in school, and I at that point had already been well exposed to editing. So when the story ran on television, after they showed the incident in which the St. Joe's Hawk was in a more or less a fight with a couple people that were at this game, it ended with, "Do you regret what happened?" The answer is no, which made all of us look even worse than what the video made us look by, even though that was not the spirit of our answer. And at that point, I learned quickly that when it comes to a journalistic story, there are two types of journalists: those who have ethics and those who are trying to prove a story that they want to drive. They both exist out there. It doesn't mean that all of them are in that same boat, but they do exist. Here's the story I want to tell, and I will shape my facts around that story. On this program, guests are given 20 minutes or so. And the reason is you have a long-form experience to express all of your reasons for what you believe and why. And when I do intros and I take a clip from that, I never edit that to change the context of what the person said. I might remove the ahs, and has.
Doing them a favor.
Well, yeah, but it's not meant to make them look good. It's for time constraints. Mm-hmm. Okay? So that's the only type of editing I will do on that. I won't change content or context. Just try to clean it up a little bit for time constraints. So both exist. It doesn't make, however, journalism an unworthy profession, nor does it taint all journalists. An active journalist community is essential to a democracy because it exposes corruption. It exposes wrongdoing. Now, it shouldn't be like Abscam, where we're setting people up to take the fall for wrongdoing, some of whom had nothing really to do with it, but were kind of coaxed into it. And that's also done by law enforcement officials at all levels. It should be done in a manner that suits the profession. So are there bad journalists out there who drive a story? Absolutely.
Oh, I knew
but
a couple
that doesn't
of them.
sink the entire profession.
No, and I'm not suggesting that the entire profession is dirty.
Without an active journalistic community, it's very difficult to expose corruption in government.
Yeah, but John, you began by saying they all do it.
As a class, yeah, because that's how you get promoted. Honestly, God, John, this is
there are good journalists who have been promoted.
There are good journalists that have been promoted. Most of them have been laid off from the Washington Post, right? All. Great many of my friends who are senior journalists at the Washington Post who did have ethical standards have been let go. And the people who were coming in to replace them, the Washington Post, the paper, as an example, the paper is going away. Why? Because it's going to the internet. What drives the internet?
And
what drives the internet is looks. Quick, how do you get the story out first, whether it's right or wrong?
And the Post has become a conservative paper.
John, it's not conservative.
Yes, it is.
Well, that's a separate argument for another day.
My issue is not that. My issue is, and it happens on both sides. I'm not suggesting it's strictly a left-wing problem. It's the way the media is structuring itself now. And it's in my line of work too. That it's less about quality than it is about being there first and being the most salacious.
Well, and you have 7 seconds to get somebody's attention, and if you don't get it, you're not going to keep it. Excuse me. Gentlemen, thank you. Spirited conversation. Didn't know if I was going to have to dive in off the top rope or not at one point.